Hi, Jack. How are you?
How are you?
I'm fine. Welcome to the committee.
Maybe the guy's gotta be
Yeah,
told.
okay, we're good. Okay, I, 1, 2, 3, 4. Only one that's missing is Tom, so we can go on. Oh, yeah.
There he is.
Hey,
Just mentioning Tom.
Tom, any shoes on?
Where are the rose petals?
All right, Tom.
Hey, I'll sit here or do I have to go someplace else?
You can sit,
That's fine.
that Tom?
yeah, spread out.
We just kept the door.
Spread out,
Oh,
yeah.
that's easy.
Oh, the other two.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think we have 11 people here, so I'm gonna call the AdCom meeting to order. Thanks, Brad.
Hey, did you mind
Okay.
putting these on? Just giving them to him.
Before we start on the voting on the agenda, I want to welcome Jack Kirshner, he's the one on the far right, and John Mahoney to AdCom this year.
I got a bunch
Thank
here,
you.
yeah.
And then Cynthia Tracy, the one on the lower right, she's the one taking the minutes for AdCom. All right? Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the June 24th meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Yep. Make a motion.
Second? Okay, all in favor? And abstain? You got it. Okay,
Yep.
so the vote is 9-0-2. Okay, the second item on agenda is Frank Spillane.
Good evening.
Okay, can you hand this out? Sorry. Okay, next one? Okay. Yeah, me too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Frank.
For those of you who don't know me, my name's Frank Spillane. I'm the moderator here in the town of Foxborough. I'm also the appointing authority for the advisory committee, as all of you I know. Larry asked me to come here this evening just to talk to the advisory committee about the advisory committee briefly, about the responsibilities and some of the other things I typically go over with the advisory committee at the beginning of each fiscal year for the advisory committee. What Larry just handed out is Chapter 5 of the Code of the Town of Foxborough that talks about the advisory committee. I normally hand that out. That is the main area where you'll find your responsibilities as the advisory committee. There are other statutory areas within state law, but most of them are indicated in here. One of the things that it doesn't talk about is reserve fund transfers, which this committee works with the town administration with regard to them, typically at the end of each fiscal year. So right away, I'd like to thank all of you for being members of the advisory committee. The advisory committee is consistent of 15 registered voters within the town of Foxborough. We try to get a cross-section of the town. As I like to tell people, I wouldn't want 15 Bernard Dumonts on here, with one type of sign mindset. We like to have a very diverse cross-section of the town, representing a broad representation of the town. The advisory committee is an independent committee within the town, advising the town on different issues. It advises the town in an objective, unbiased way, reviewing those issues that way, and giving recommendations to the town, either at town meeting or through other avenues. A couple things I'd like to go over with the members. No members of this committee can be a member of any other town committee or board. So if anyone's been appointed to any other town committee or board, that isn't within the bylaw. then you have to step down either from that board or from this board. You also can't be an employee of the town. So I don't think anyone's an employee of the town. Also, if any members of your family, wife or children, are employed by the town, you should talk to me about that. And then I make a determination as whether there's any conflict and if there are some issues within which you should not be participating, either voting or involved in discussion. As this committee knows, you review all of the budget warrant articles and make recommendations at the town meeting. You should be doing that, again, in an independent way with unbiased and objective reviews of that. The biggest thing being the budget. Under our bylaw, the budget is supposed to be filed with the advisory committee no later than February 1st. Those requested amounts from each of the different departments, the different boards and committees that oversee different departments, that is the line item that goes into the warrant with regard to the budget and CIP with regard to the requested amount. And within the warrant, that then sets a ceiling within which town meeting cannot go above. The budget that's presented at town meeting is the one that the advisory committee recommends. So the advisory committee can make a recommendation at town meeting that is lower than what either the selectmen or the advisory or the town manager or the water and sewer commissions or whatever they request for their budgets. So the motion that goes in front of town meeting is the advisory committees. And anyone at town meeting can increase your amount, but no higher than what was requested again back on February 1st. Well, that may have been changed in the interim. I'd like to go over a few things with regard to how the advisory committee does its business with regard to write-ups and all that. Before each town meeting, the advisory committee is supposed to have a write-up of their votes with regard to each warrant article and how they determine whether it was approved or disapproved by the advisory committee with each warrant article. And then the write-up gives, again, an overview of how the committee discussed it, reviewed it, and then eventually voted on each warrant article, again, either approving or not approving it. At town meeting, each of the warrants article is written in the affirmative by a member of the advisory committee, and then typically that person then, again, discuss the advisory committee's recommendation. If somebody on the advisory committee wants to give a minority opinion or discuss that article that's contrary to the advisory committee, I request that they talk with the chairman and also talk to me. And if they want to do that, they have to do that from the stage, off the stage on the floor. So it's clear that it's their opinion and not the opinion of the advisory committee. I also typically go over some of the rules with regard to your meetings. This is a public meeting and not a public hearing that the advisory committee has. The difference is at a public hearing, the public has a right to speak at some point during that hearing. So when the planning board or the selectmen have a public hearing, they're going through whatever process they have, whether it's a site plan or a liquor license or something like that. At some point during that hearing, the public has a right to speak, ask questions, give comments. At public meetings, they have a right to attend, but they don't have a right to speak. The board or committee and the chairman can decide to allow people to speak at each of the meetings as it goes along. But there is a difference, and it's up to the committee and especially the chairman to decide how it's going to be go for each meeting, typically. And everyone should speak through the chairman so that people aren't speaking over each other or interrupting each other, and being courteous to each other. In the past, different committees have set time limits on what time they're going to end. That's up to, again, this committee whether they want to do that, and whether they want to go past that by a vote of the committee that's in attendance at that. Those are some of the things that I discussed. One of the things I typically advise the advisory committee to do is to not vote any article that is presented that same night. Many times when things are going at the end, an article is presented, I typically recommend that you don't vote anything that's presented that night, that you give yourself some time to think about it, and you can vote it the very next week. But at times, things come up at the last minute, and they're pressed upon you. I think it's a good idea to have that as a rule. You can discuss that. But again, that rule can be voted out for that particular item on any one night. But it's something to think about with regard to that. With regard to letters to the editor in any paper or writing on, the internet or any of those types of places, I usually recommend doing any of those things because it only can cause confusion and bring up issues that aren't appropriate for the advisory committee, and you're supposed to be doing things on an unbiased way. However, being a member of the advisory committee does not take away your right of free speech. So again, I usually recommend before you file any letters of the editor for any newspaper, to talk with the chairman and or myself about that, to see whether it's really worth it or not, and also to give us a heads up. And again, on the internet and all the websites and all that, just be very careful, because it can be a reflection on the advisory committee itself and the work you're doing, and take away from all the hard work that this committee does throughout the year. There are some sites that can help you. I know Larry's sent out some sites that have been out there. There are some sites, I don't know, Larry, if you have this, it's a guide to financial management in town offices. In the past, we found that you have that,
Yeah.
is very good. And there's other guide to financial management for town officials and things like that can really give people an understanding of what this committee, which in some communities is called the finance committee, here it's called the advisory committee, how it works and how it relates to all the other departments and committees and boards with regard to that. And with that, I think that's my overview. Again, if anybody has any questions at any time during the year, feel free to give me a call. I'm more than happy to help anybody out. Does anybody have any questions?
Anyone? Okay, thank you, Frank.
All right, great. Thanks. And thank you again for all volunteering and putting all the time and effort into it.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda is the town manager, Bill.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new year. Happy New Year, all right? It's nice to see all of you again and some of the new faces, so welcome aboard. Happy to have you here and looking forward to working with you all. Like Frank, I think it's a big commitment of time on your part to do this work, and we're grateful for the fact that you do it, and you really do help the town in so many ways, because it's your recommendations that help the town meeting do their business, and as you know, that's the legislative arm of this town, so we really need that help to guide the community in making decisions which are very, very important for how the community runs going forward. As far as our role, my role as town manager is to work with helping with the budget process, along with the finance director and director of accounting. You'll meet them in a few minutes. We're here to provide you with as much factual information that you need in order to do your work. I do throughout the year produce a budget document that you'll see. It's usually the first one that you'll get is a culmination of all the information that we've collected during the process, which, as Frank correctly pointed out, has to be submitted to you by February 1st of each year. We try to get it to you around the middle of January, and we're going to continue to do that. Now, there's been a couple things that have been complicating that process this year. In case you haven't noticed, I see all of you wearing masks tonight. So, there's a world called COVID-19 that we live in now, has created a scenario which is unique, and I have not seen it in 37 years, which was that we've not seen a budget, a state budget, that's been finalized even up till now. I did see that the governor today came out with a recommended budget. He actually came out with a budget which came out in January of this year, was then sent to the legislature for the House and Senate recommendations, and then COVID-19 hit. And so they weren't able to finish or complete their hearings on the budget, so we we still don't see a budget as of right now. In fact, what the state's doing is passing resolutions to fund the government on a month-to-month basis. In March, when COVID-19 hit, and before town meeting actually occurred here in Foxborough, we came to this committee and said, it's time for us to relook at the budget, because there were a lot of assumptions made about this fiscal year that we just don't think will come true now. And we're going to get to a point where we can actually share that information with you. We're trying to get a good handle on where we are in this fiscal year. We've got through one quarter. We're down a little bit, but not any amount that's caused me tremendous concern at this point. We estimated it low, and it's coming in low, and so we're not surprised by any of that. Good news. Some good news is that the budget that was filed by the governor today is about $1.2 million higher than the estimate that we had given for you all to approve a town meeting. So we estimated it low purposely because we didn't think it would come in at that level, but it is coming in higher. That's good news. So we have a little bit of room to maneuver here. Our local receipts, our new growth estimate was around 650. Right now, it's coming in close to 6, so we're not far off that number. Our local receipts number is a little bit on the low side right now, obviously because of the fact that we didn't see any concerts over the summer. We didn't see any. We're not seeing football in person. We're seeing it virtually at Gillette Stadium this year.
Concerts.
Yeah, concerts. Yeah, with no concerts, of course, and then and no shows, no additional shows. So, and that's real revenue to us. I mean, we looked at the numbers today, and on average, over the past 8 years, we've averaged close to $3 million a year in payments in lieu of taxes from Gillette Stadium. This year, we're seeing somewhere, we will be fortunate to reach $2 million if we can get there. So it's a big hit, but we anticipated that as part of the budget process. So George and Maria will get into where we are and the process will start. We'll get into that detail later on, but right now we're only going based upon 1 quarter's worth of revenues, and we'll get to that point.
Just one parenthesis, on the pilot, there is a ceiling, right? So the 2 million is still above that ceiling.
Yeah, the 1.5 million is the guaranteed minimum.
Okay.
I said we'll be lucky to reach 2 million because we don't know what could happen in the spring. We could still see a couple concerts come in by the end of June. If that doesn't come in, obviously, then that number will be lower. But I think we're taking an optimistic view right now, only because none of us really know. But I do think that, we anticipated that we're only counting on 1.5. So I do think that the number could come in at that number, or at least that number, but it could be higher.
Thank you.
We also did see some money come in on the meals tax and hotel motel tax, which we didn't expect to see a lot. We did see some come in, and that was during the more difficult times leading up to that. So we did see some money come in, obviously lower than what we anticipated. So we're not surprised by that either. I think motor vehicle excise was actually running a little bit higher. So that's a good news in that respect. So people are still buying cars, and people are still paying their excise taxes, which is a good sign. That means that the underlying economy is actually still pretty strong in many cases. Obviously, some people are still have lost their jobs, but on the real estate side, I think where we finished this past year was actually quite extraordinary. We're close to 98% collected.
98 and some change, actually, yeah. So, which was pretty much the
Pretty
way
normal,
it always
for the
is.
most part. And that's through June. that we made that collection. So we're actually better than I thought in many ways. I didn't think it would come in that high, but it actually did. And so, in the underlying economy on that side, there are virtually no houses for sale in this town. The market is extremely tight, and people still want to move to Foxborough, and the prices are going up. So, which does raise a little bit of a concern, because with a limited amount of housing availability, and the price is still going up, that means it could be squeezing more people out of the town in some ways, because the value of those houses then becomes a reflection on the tax rate, and that becomes an issue to consider too. So we have to be really mindful of that, and I get a little bit concerned about that, but certainly you want to be in a position where the housing values are staying stable and getting higher as opposed to going the other way, which would be really problematic if that were the case. So, by and large, again, we're here as advisors. We're not here to tell you how to do your work. We're here to help you and get you the way you need to be. So, for your recommendations, we're here to serve as a resource. George, Marie, and I are at your beck and call in terms of information as you see fit, and we're here to help in any way we can. So, with that, I'll turn it over to, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over.
Can I ask you a quick question, Bill?
Sure.
Can you talk about expenses? What have you
Sure.
done to at least hold it down? Or keep it
Yeah,
stable?
so on the expense side, actually, we're seeing our expenses are doing okay, at least as respects to the town side of government. And the reason why I say that is because, because we haven't had a lot of events, we haven't had a lot of extra work, overtime requirements, things of that nature that we've needed on the public safety side. We haven't, a lot of people, you can't go anywhere, so there's no training and going outside other than on what's on virtual, online. And so we're doing that the best we can. And as far as, we're not adding new positions. We haven't done added any new positions, but we are filling the positions that are critical, because if we don't have them, we're gonna run into a problem that's gonna will create a problem operationally for us. So we're trying we've actually done a few things. We actually had to lay off one person in the recreation side because that program runs on fees, and because there were no programs, there was no ability to fund it. One other person has agreed to work to fill in on a part-time basis on a position that we had available in the finance department. It's working out with George and Marie right now, and it's working out really well. It's actually killing two birds with one stone, if you will, because it helps that person stay employed, but also teaches them how our accounting system works, and actually is helping them so they can do their job better when they go back to being a full-time person in recreation. And that's something that has been difficult to come by over the years, because that a typical person working in recreation is good when it comes to recreation programs, but the strength is not in the finance side. This actually is providing that training to do that, so it's actually working out really well. So by and large, on the expense side, I think we're actually in pretty good shape. I don't see that as being a major concern. Our health insurance number came in better than we thought. We just saw our renewal come in for our retiree insurance was actually a negative increase this year. So that was a positive thing. So we're happy to see that. And even on the health insurance side, Meyer actually gave back money to employees and to the town this year for one week, because they took in more money than they needed for last year's program.
Well, it was it was 2-week period.
Right,
half a month.
one pay period, yeah,
Half a
thank
month,
you.
yeah.
Well, it was
Which
one
we
pay
benefited
period,
from
one
as
pay
well, yeah.
Exactly, it was one pay period, as well as the dental, by the way, which also worked out for 2 pay periods, because of the way that program works.
What about auto insurance? You get any money?
For auto, we actually got the increase was not nearly as big as it could have been. So that was a good thing too on the auto side.
Can you talk briefly about did we spend more money on CARES Act since the last time we spoke? Plus, and then the
yes.
last quick question I have is,
Yeah.
are we still going to have a town meeting, the special town meeting this year?
So what I just read today was, I don't think you will see one, at least on this side of the calendar, in terms of December 31st. The reason I say that is because the governor came out with a recommended budget today. He doesn't expect to see a budget until Thanksgiving. So if that's the case, then there really wouldn't be any reason for us to go forward. Now, having said that, because we conservatively estimated the revenues, we probably won't need one anyways. Probably won't need to go out to make any budget adjustments at this point in time. But the other side of that coin is on the school side, I worry a little bit about what's happening there because they are surviving with a lot of federal and state aid right now. They've had a lot of expenses paid for through COVID-19. Somewhere in the order of $800,000-900,000 has come from the federal government to help pay for that. So we don't see a commitment, a new commitment beyond 12/31 for federal aid at this point. My gut feeling tells me that you will see one after the election, post-election. The only thing that worries me about that, if we have a challenged election, what will happen with that? So that could actually slow things down even further. So we have to be mindful of that. We think they'll get through at least till December. If we have to go back to address that situation at town meeting in January or February, then the selectmen will have to call for a special town meeting to do that.
Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, despite the state having to run its residual meetings every month that pass, have we been able to close the books on 2020 as of June 30th? Is everything
The
done?
books are being closed as we speak, and actually close to being closed now. So we're actually, and I'll let these folks talk about that.
Okay.
Because actually we did okay. We did okay in closing out the year.
Just curious how close to our target were we,
Yeah,
our estimations, did we show up?
We did end up with a free cash position, which is good. It was.
It's not certified yet,
Not certified yet, but-
we can eyeball it.
Yeah, based on that number, we're in a reasonably good position. So,
The two questions, and maybe this is also more from a big picture standpoint. One, you've slightly mentioned about property taxes. In terms of everything happening, especially in our town, how would you say people are tracking in terms of what we've expected? Because property taxes is a big chunk of the sources of unexpected. So number one. Number two question is, you've talked about all the plus minus. Now, fiscal year 21 was approved as a balanced budget, sources and uses of fund. Big picture, how is it being projected in terms of having a balanced budget, plus minus, without talking about all the parts, for fiscal year 21?
Well, what Bill just said a couple minutes ago is when we closed last year, which was a pretty bad year, we were looking at about a 98.5 or so, I don't remember the exact amount, of collections. So even during the big wipeout here where everybody was in their house, we still collected, okay? I think one of the things that most people don't, let me explain something. When it comes down to getting the money, the government is always first in line, okay? So if you have a mortgage and you are escrowed, the reason the bank usually escrows you, okay, is because they know that if something happens and you don't pay the taxes, we get first dibs before the bank does. So a lot of people who are already out there would have had this money escrowed anyway, and the bank is going to make sure that it's paid. So there's a big chunk of that, I think, is what's making it sounds a little, I don't know, it sounds a little mercenary, but it's a reality. That's the way it is. Government is in front of the banks, and they don't want to lose an asset if they feel as though it's going down the drain. So they want those taxes paid. So I think what we're saying to you, obviously it's just the beginning of the year and it goes quarterly and what have you, and things have to go out. But I think that you're going to find that we'll be where we were last year, give or take a point or a half a point or something to that effect. And I think we'll be okay, or at least in that. The big thing is like what Bill said is the local receipts that are the big question mark, you know?
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, I would be thinking a little far ahead here, but assuming there is a special town meeting, assuming it is after January 1st, how does that affect our process for next year's budget?
It doesn't really
Any other
change,
way-
yeah,
department heads or anything?
it doesn't change the process at all, Dan. So what happens would be that your process would continue during that phase, but it just makes it complicated, because you have to look at two different things at
Yep.
the same time. So I'd be a little reluctant to do it unless we really had to. And if there was something that really required us to come forward and make a budget change that was significant, particularly relates to, school situation. But I wouldn't want to put the work on you, and I don't think we want to complicate the life
Yeah, I
of
was just
anyone
thinking
else
that would be
either.
a lot condensed
Yeah,
into one
it
short
would.
period of time. Okay,
Especially where it's difficult for us to even know what that number is still at this point.
right, yep.
So we won't know it till probably before Thanksgiving, which doesn't give us a lot of window, it gives us a relatively small window to get the meeting in, because your town meeting's is 6 months later.
Bill, I have a question and comment.
Sure.
In respect to the special town meeting, if there's really no need to have one in February or January, whatever, because every time we have a town meeting, there's a slight expenses to the town. We
sure.
gotta print stuff, we gotta do a lot of things. So if there's really no need to have one, we'll just wait till, do in April, May, and just,
Right.
knock everything
yeah,
out.
Yeah, and you can't really change the annual meeting, it's
Right.
set by
Right.
by
Right.
bylaw
State,
as to
yeah.
what that is, but I do think that, like I said, the only reason you'd want to do that, and you can always do a special within the annual, that's always an option.
Yeah.
So it's basically held the same night, and it's,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen a lot, but it could be done that way,
Yeah.
which would fund things within the existing fiscal year, and then the annual meeting would fund things for the next fiscal year,
Yeah.
right?
My follow-up question on the CARES Act is that, I know you mentioned the schools, there's a lot of expenses.
Yep.
Do we still have money left over from the 1.6 million?
We do, so, but here's the caveat with that. We spent about $1 million. There's about $500,000 left, where we've got a couple things that we're looking at right now, purchasing. But we're also, trying to store up on our PPE.
Okay.
And so we're asking to see if we can get some additional supplies. The last thing we want to do is turn the money back.
Gotcha. Yeah.
If we can help it, because you don't see federal money very often.
Right.
So we're trying, but if it's not there and we, don't have anything, there were certain things that, like even the school department was looking to try and buy a couple buses, but they weren't eligible.
Okay.
But strangely enough, they did approve a council on aging ban, which is strange. They did approve that.
Yeah, but you know what I think that was, Bill, was because Marie asked them early, and they gave them a snap judgment, and then couldn't back out because it was in writing.
And they put it in writing to her, and
Yeah.
they said it's approved.
Good job, Mary.
So they put us in a bad, bad.
So it's one less thing we have to pay for and stay in the capital program this year, but because we really did need the van, because we don't have a handicap lift in the van. And right now, there's a lot of seniors that need to get on the van, and they can't get on the van.
Right.
So we needed that extra capacity, and Mark made a very compelling case for that, so. Brian?
Bill, is there a certain time of the year when you see more local receipts come in
Yes.
across a calendar year?
Yes.
I'm
there
trying
is.
to assess if the impact with COVID was less because, of the time that it happened.
So one of your biggest pieces of the local receipts is your motor vehicle excise.
Okay.
And that typically goes out in February. All right, so when you see that come in by March, you'll know where we are. But we do get periodic payments throughout the year, though we were just talking about this today, that, in my town, I haven't got a motor vehicle excise bill, and I got a car last April. I still haven't seen a bill for it. So I don't know if towns aren't just sending them out. We're sending them out. But I don't know if they're not getting the information out of the state and all. But when we actually had a payment just recently that went through, so.
Oh, yeah.
So we've been getting them periodically, so.
But by far and away, the largest portion will come in the last 3 months, like
Yeah.
May, June,
Okay.
July, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we tend to see that money trickle in that way. And also, you tend to see more activity, of course, through Gillette Stadium. If they hold concerts in the spring, you'll see some money come in that way, too.
Okay.
Larry, did we lose our minute taker?
We lost Dennis, too.
We lost.
Is it just the way the thing came?
I'm here.
See, it's,
Tracy, there you go.
back on
Yeah,
again.
they just went off camera, that's all.
It's okay because it's recorded.
Okay,
Even
yep.
if you lose it, she can follow up.
No, I'm here.
Quick other picture, if I may.
I just didn't think
This
I
may be a
wanted to
bit
see the side of
premature,
my
but
face.
I'm thinking again, mid to long term.
She was incognito mode.
Yeah, there she is. Yeah.
Yeah, she's back
She's
on.
there.
She's
She was
back
just
on.
hiding. That's all.
Usually we see, let's call it pretty much an annualized increase in, expenses on a yearly basis, annualized. I'm thinking about, again, the concept of sources and uses of fund. Would you say that, again, maybe be premature to ask with everything happening, in terms of, usually we make it up two ways. The property taxes, given the formula we have, go up, and water and sewer is different because they have their own, call it P&L, but still,
Yeah.
my question is, would you say that with everything happening, I'm thinking about people feeling it, there would be a way to, there would be the, let's call it, with quite a bit of employees here who are part of union and so on, there is the natural pay increase and so on. How do you foresee this in terms of the sources of fund and people, let's say, not fitting it into higher property taxes, or is it too premature to talk about that? I'm thinking about, again, for next year, having
Yeah.
a balanced budget.
I mean, if we're gonna see anything happen, it would probably be the collections for this year, this fiscal year, as opposed to next. I truly do believe that fiscal '22 will be a better year. It may be a later part of the year, later part of the calendar year '21, before we get to that, but at the end of the fiscal year, I think it will be better. But I do think that, let me just say, my theory about this is that I think people are gonna pay their property tax, because the alternative, they don't have a really good alternative. Because if when you think about it, if you don't have any housing options, where are you gonna go? And the only way you're gonna stay in your property is if you pay your taxes. So I do think that they're gonna try and do everything they can to pay those taxes for that reason.
Not to mention the value's up. You don't want to
Value's
lose
up.
it when the.
And you don't wanna lose it because,
when the value's
you
up.
don't lose it to the town based on the fact you didn't pay your taxes. So I think folks will do everything they can to keep their property, and especially in this town, because a lot of people are trying to get into this town, and it's a very desirable place.
Thank you.
Bill, it's Dennis. I don't recall where we ended up with revenue and expenses for the Patriots.
We can hear
I
you.
can-
Really hear 'em.
Sorry,
Maybe you can,
Can you turn up, Dennis? Can you turn up your microphone, Dennis? I can't hear you, unfortunately.
is it him or is it us?
Dan, can you tell the good guy controlling?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You may,
Stand by for a second, Dan.
Okay, good, try it.
Can.
Can you turn up the?
make
Go
it
ahead, Dennis.
louder?
He's saying it's on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
There you go, there you go.
There you go.
No, I was just asking about the Patriots in terms of revenues and expenses, what we budgeted, and what you think the experience is gonna be, and whether it's a major issue or not.
Well, so the review that we've done is that over the 8 years, we typically average around $3 million a year, Dennis, and this year, we're looking at, the minimum payment would be 1.5 million, and there's a guarantee in the lease documents that requires them to pay that minimum payment. The other part of it is that we still may see some things happen at the end of the fiscal year, meaning May, June, July of next year, May, June of next year, which could actually impact that number and actually get a little bit more revenue into the stadium. But if not, we're not anticipating it, we're looking at it. I think you might come in around 2 million instead of 3 million this year.
Remember, we did undercut all those, when I say undercut, we went below what we normally would have gotten it backfilled. So right now, like Bill said, and we'll go over it in a couple minutes, but we're like $1.2 million ahead if the state comes in level. We don't know exactly where it is, but we were $1.2 million below. We actually went down 11-12%. And work from there. So anything now that if they stay level, then there's $1.2 million of space there for us to work with on the state aid portion.
Good, thank you.
Other questions?
All set?
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Next on the agenda is George, Finance Manager.
Thank you. Well, you asked me to come in and
finance
kind of
director,
give you an overview for the new folks
Yeah.
that are here on the board. And I tend to be, I try to simplify things down to a very, minimum level. And not to sound condescending to the folks that have been here doing this before, but we're also on TV, so in the hopes that, some of the folks at home will understand what we're talking about, and then maybe, the newer people will catch on as well. But basically speaking, I think Frank said it at the beginning, you guys are an advisory board, but a finance committee basically sticks strictly to the numbers, but you guys do it all, okay? But by far and away, let's face it, the largest portion of what we go to town meeting with is financial. I'm not saying there isn't anything else, but it's financial. We do an 80-some-odd million dollar budget every year. So at the heart of any of these budgets that you do, whether you're doing it for IBM, whether you're doing it for the town of Foxborough, whether you're doing it for your own household, somebody said it, I can't remember who, you're matching revenues against expenditures, and it's as simple as that. So if we're going to start talking about matching revenues against expenditures, why don't we go to where we left off last year? And when I say last year, as of June 15th of a couple of months back, that's when we did our annual town meeting. So what I thought I'd do is just go over and do a recap of what we did, how we got there, and show how the budget gets built. So, again, if we start with just talking about revenue, we got to start with the revenues. Where does the town get its revenues from? Tax levy, for one. That's always near and dear to everybody's heart. That's real estate personal property taxes. This is the local, this is your house taxes, the ones that we were just talking about a few minutes ago. The second place is, again, your taxes, only it comes in a kind of a strange way. The state kind of extracts it through sales tax, and then, like Robin Hood, kind of gives it back and reallocates it to the town later. Again, it's all your taxes, and it just comes in a different form, and it comes in the form of what we call the cherry sheet. Why was it called the cherry sheet? It used to come in on a piece of pink paper. That's why. Local receipts are your excise tax, meals tax, inspection fees, fines, and interest. There's a number of other things on there. When we talk about a fee, a lot of people say, well, that's a tax, but I guess the fundamental differences between fees and taxes are you kind of have your hand on the switch with a fee as opposed to a tax. Tax just comes in and you pay it. A fee, if you're not building a building this year, you're not going to have to pay a building inspection fee, okay? If you're not buying, if you're not renting something for time, you don't have to do it. Even the water, for example, that you're taking in, that's fee-driven. Now, there's going to be a minimum on there, but if you're really holding off on your sink and everything like that, you can hold down how much it is compared to somebody that's sprinkling their yard. The final piece where we get our money from is what we call available funds, or I call it you're cannibalizing things that are already out there. Free cash, stabilization, overlay. These are things where we've money in the bank already, and we're utilizing it, or we're going into an account that was already put out a couple of years ago, might have a balance in it, and we say, can we take some of that money out of there and use it for a different reason, and it goes to a town meeting. Now, those are the four main places you're getting your money. Somebody at home might ask, well, what about grants? What about gifts? Why don't you use it there? Because you can't allocate it at a town meeting, because the grants that come in are for specific purposes and they have specific legal ramifications for their use. So I'm making this up because I don't know if you get some kind of, from the Mass Fire Association or something like that through the state, a $50,000 grant for an ambulance, okay, or to buy an ambulance with. You can't go to the town meeting and say, hey, can we use this money for buying the town finance director a new desk? It has to be used for an ambulance, and there's no other reason for it. So those are your four main places that we're working off of. So now let's analyze what we did last year and some of the things that we actually did. So the first place, like I told you before, is the tax rate. Now, for those that have been around long enough, Proposition 2.5, there is a statewide tax cap that was voted in sometime in the mid-'80s as a referendum on a ballot. Citizens for Limited Taxation, Barbara Anderson. I was a bouncing baby boy back at that particular point in time, but I do remember it happening. What it basically says is you can't go up without override or a debt exclusion override over 2.5% of the levy, of the prior year's levy limit. Now, in our case, last year, if you look, our levy limit was $49,768,000. So 2.5% of that was $1,244,000. Now, there's a strange little thing that happens with this. Everybody that's sitting at home, my taxes went up higher than 2.5%, okay? The 2.5% is on the entire tax levy. From there, the assessors go through more state-controlled calculations, which says your house has gone up by 20%, your house went down by 10, and therefore, when it's all done, that $1,244,000 is spread, but it's not spread evenly. So that if I happen to have a house that was worth $500,000, well, how come it went up? That's more than 2.5%. But it might have gone up. My house might have gone up by $100,000, if you follow what I'm saying. So it gets moved around underneath, but what you're doing is you're not spreading equally that $1,244,000. So that there's always that thing. People are like, what are you talking about? My taxes went up higher. But we're held to that $1,244,000 for fiscal '21, and that is the actual number, by the way.
Yeah. George?
Yes.
Historically, have we kept it at around 2.5?
Has to be, because unless you've overrode, and then I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
What you guys have done is debt exclusion overrides, and there's a distinct difference between it all.
George, that's not true. It can be lower.
Well, yeah, you can go backwards, yes. No, but he asked if we've ever gone up over that.
We have not had
Right. You guys have done debt exclusions. I don't believe you've done a straight-up override in the last few years. It's all debt exclusion.
They've never done it.
We've never done one.
All right, you see, I've only been here for a year and a half, so I don't know whether it ever happened a long time ago. See the number new growth over there? That's a calculation by the assessors, and they're currently in there right now calculating that up, all right? And what that basically is, a new business that came into town. I added a garage to the house that I've already got. I built a whole brand-new house, okay? Any number of nuances make up that $650,000 that we predicted last year. Over the past number of years, we've been making about 900 plus, 940,000 has been what the average is on our growth. Of course, last year, with everything that happened, I mean, we drastically reduced it. Right now, I won't say for sure, but the assessor is looking, we're not doing bad in that particular area. Okay, so I think we were kind of on the money on that. Now, you see the blank right there is an override. Now, watch this nuance here, because that's the one thing I want to bring out. You see where the override would have been. Let's say we overrode, and let's make a distinction. What is an override? You're asking the town or the people, I need another $1 million, okay? But I want it for general operating purposes. We would have put the override in that add override for 2021. What would have happened is that, let's call it $1 million. That $1 million would have gone down to your levy limit, and now instead of $51,662,000, you'd add $52,662,000. That number would go forward next year forever, unless there was an underride, and then 2.5% on top of that, forever and ever and ever, until you go backwards, which I think has only happened twice in the history of the state, okay? So note that there's nothing in the override section. However, if you look at the FY21 debt exclusion, which falls under the levy limit, what that constitutes is a number of debt bond issuances that you went to town meeting on over the last several years, okay? And This is what we are paying principal and interest on each one of those bond issuances for fiscal '21. But again, note it's below the levy limit. Next year, when that levy limit comes up to be recalculated again, it's coming up as 51 million, not 53 million. That's only going to last as long as those debt payments are being made. So if one of them falls off next year and you lost $500,000 on it, then that number comes down the next fiscal year until it's gone or until you add some more. There's a very, I'm going to end with this and kind of remind me at the end, because there's something I want to talk about that I think is a pretty good thing that you guys did. And when I say you guys, I mean the town, okay? But at this time of the night, I start smelling the Burger King out there, so I might slam down the thing and run out before I get this point done. So somebody remind me on the last thing. So there's your tax levy for fiscal '21, okay? So now let's get into the cherry sheet.
So, sorry, could I ask, the debt?
Sure.
The debt exclusion is what we're receiving from bonding?
We have to pay, just like somebody would have to pay a mortgage.
Yeah.
So, for example,
That's the annual payment we're making towards
the
capital.
annual payment. And what we've done is, or what we've asked the town to do is, will you give us this annual payment from now, could be 20 years from now? Now, a funny thing is people a lot of times will say, well, this isn't for the rest of your life. Now, for somebody that's like myself, that's only pushing 30 years old, I'm, yeah, it probably isn't for the rest of my life. On the other hand, if you're in retirement and you're saying 20 years, it could be for the rest of your life that you're paying it. Yeah.
In shorthand, I think it's an override is you're just adding more revenue without the expectation of paying it back.
Absolutely.
Whereas debt exclusion is it's debt you're going to pay back and it's go off the books eventually,
Right.
So it doesn't go to your bottom line each and every year.
It does have a
like an equity
logical
loan.
conclusion.
It's like an equity loan. It's like,
Right, it has a logical conclusion, and it's for a specific purpose. So somebody, I don't want that going to this guy so he can go buy a new car with it. Wait a minute, this is not for that, this is for a new building, okay? Might be a wing on the school.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you just hold it, because it's really important that you know that we have not done a debt exclusion in this town.
No,
in the
haven't
past.
done it
I
right.
think it's been like 10 years.
Well, actually, you just caught me on the, because that was gonna be my ending.
Not done one in a long
So let me say it right at the end. One of the things you folks did, okay, you folks at home in the finance committees or whoever they were at the time and whoever was in charge at the time, is the latest piece last year, prior to all of the COVID things that we're dealing with. What was our biggest challenge? You folks chose to put some money away to start with, which is why our free cash was up so high. Remember, it was hitting almost $8 million?
Yeah.
They built it up over a number of years, then used it to pay out so they could get the new school down. And then, instead of usually on a large bond issuance like this, you would go out and add, well, I'll go backwards. You would go out and add to the bottom line. Like, that should have been about $3 million, okay? Because the payment on that bond issuance was about $940,000, okay, for the new school. You guys did it within your own budget, okay? What does that mean to the taxpayer? The taxpayers didn't have to come up with on their thing another $900,000 that was spread over everything. It was done from within. Good news is that was a very challenging thing. Unfortunately, it was challenging the way it was, but then, of course, now we can add the problem of the COVID thing on top of it. But I will say that it was very admirable. I don't think I've ever seen that done any other place than here. So you guys and whoever was here at the time knew what they were doing. And it was admirable. It's a little bit of a challenge, but they knew what they were doing.
If I could just add having been on this committee for 11 years, the strategy has been put in play, one, with trying to stay away from overrides, doing
Yes.
debt exclusions, setting stuff money that you have, so you have down, you can lower the amount that you actually have to bond.
Right.
What we've always done or advocated for, especially the advisor, the person in your position prior to you, and then also on our board, as well as selectmen, have looked at this and have pretty much taxed up to that 2.5% maximum. When there's plenty of cries to lower that, or we don't have to go all the way up to that, what it does is strategically, it looks good for the debtors, I mean, the people who would loan us money. It increases our value there for our bond rating because we are doing as the maximum that we can to bring in revenue to the town. It allows us, the town, to have a backstop in negotiations with the multiple unions we have in town, of saying, well, you can just tax them more. If you're only taxing them at 1% increase, say, well, tax them more, because, for that part, as well as the stability of being able to the budget with a number that you pretty much know you're going to have in a percentage basis each year that this just rolls over.
Right.
So that's, as far as I've seen, over a decade of that kind of strategy in preparing the budget.
Yes.
The taxing to the cap has worked out well enough so that when in good years we were able to put more aside up front, and the down years like now we've had it there to backstop. But like you said, $3 million, I think we say, was it, or 3.5, whatever, for the borough school to put down ahead of time, that we didn't have to borrow at whatever rate it was. Even though it was a good rate, it's a good rate for 20 years that you're not paying that interest for. You saved another million.
But you also saved $4 million you didn't have to put out for 20 years. So
I think what's really key, and you raise a very good point there, Tom. So I think the issue is that by taxing to the levy that you do, it gives you the ability to pay some of the things as you go, which a lot of people have not managed their finances that way. A lot of communities have not done that. This community has had a long history of doing that. And to your credit, collective credit as a town, to do that to the point where you've given you the ability, you pay for this building within a levy, you pay for this, the borough school within a levy. Yeah. As George and I both have said, I've been doing this for 37, he's been doing it for 36.
Never seen anything like that.
Neither one of us has ever seen a school paid for within the levy.
No.
Never happened.
I mean, it's something to be really proud of. I mean, I know it's a challenge right now. I mean, of course, nobody could have predicted this, but I mean, that's something that just isn't done. And and I don't mean that as a bad thing. It just isn't done.
It's a good thing.
So this maximum levy allowable is what the assessors use to set their tax rate then?
Well, ultimately, the tax rate is set based on that levy. Okay,
Yeah.
That's one of the first components of it. Then the assessors go in, and there's a number of calculations, which Hannah could probably tell you. Hannah Simone is our chief assessor.
Okay.
And she will be in later on, I think, what is it, October, to talk with, what we do. We also have the tax levy hearing. I think a few of you attended. Yeah, you, Jack, you were there last year when we did it. The tax rate. Yeah. It's in November or whatever. So we go there, and then after they do the gyration, many of which, understand something, this is not something made up by the town of East Bridgewater. I mean, I'm sorry, I worked in East Bridgewater for 30 years, and I have a hard time getting away from it. This isn't a town of Foxborough thing. This is a state of Massachusetts. It's done the same way in every town, so we don't have any special way of doing it. She has to do the calculations, and it has to be checked over by the state. And then, of course, if something was wrong, you can dispute it and get an abatement or something to that effect. But for the most part, it's all done the same exact way. So we're not, a lot of times I think people think we just came up with these weird things and this is how we do it, but some other place it's done differently. It isn't, because you can't set the tax rate unless the state of Massachusetts
George, can I ask a
tells you.
question? I'm glad you talked about the state. Usually, when do they set the tax rate? Around this time?
The
Selectman does it with a hearing around, I think we're in for November 13th this year.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. When will the state certify or give you the okay for the tax rate?
Once you've had the tax rate hearing, then we got to put in what is known as the recap sheet, which has everything that we've done. It's a regurgitation of the budget, okay? Here's what we voted, here's everything, and then a tax rate is set. It's usually set on what the assessors have done. They certify it, and then we can go out and put the
February 1st payment.
Yes, exactly.
The first payment, the final.
Right.
February
and May.
Goes out on December 31st.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
All right. So the process is we do the town, selectmen, everybody. Once it's certified, it goes to the state, and they give you the okay, and then you print the bill. Then you print the bill.
And it's all predicated on everything that we've done, what we're going over right now, and everything that we did for the whole year. All the town meetings, all the money that came in, everything, that's how the thing is set and all the things that, and here's the thing, even if we went in and we decided, I'm gonna just highball the local receipts, and instead of the 10 million or 11 million, I'm just gonna put in 15 so that we can get the hell done with this thing, okay? They're not gonna let you do it, because they're gonna say, justify this. How come last year you got this, and suddenly now you're putting in another $2 million? Why? Is there something going on? What? Tell us what it is. And if you don't have a good explanation, they won't set the tax rate.
And George, this is just maybe for people who probably already have the same question. In terms of the debt exclusion, so I think Tom mentioned it, very much like a HELOC. So at a point in time, those local bonds were issued by the town. I'm just trying to listen to the whole cash flow thing.
Right.
So they were issued at a point in time, and they have X number of years. So this amount, is it the sum of the annual payment of these bonds?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what it
Perfect.
is.
Number two, in terms, because very much like a HELOC, we have to repay it. Do we see the repayment in the use of, in the use of cash, in the use of funds also?
Yes, in fact, I did give you guys Article 4.
Okay.
Article 4 on here. If you look at almost the very last page, you'll see a thing called debt service on the last page. Now, of course, right here, you're looking at it in bulk. There's debt service interest and there's debt service principal.
Right.
But that consists of about 15 or 20 different bond issuances, each one for a different year. So do you see where I'm looking? I see you squinting.
The 2 million.
Last page of the budget part that says Article 4.
Right.
So you'll see on there that we actually are paying total debt service of $3,713,000.
Very clear.
Okay.
Bernard, are you recalling back to the debt expiration table we used to get?
Right.
The 20-year table of what is going off the books and what's coming
Yes, we have that.
Okay.
Yes, there is an actual.
Okay.
In fact, we get.
I think they just gave us an annual payment as opposed to a breakdown between interest and
I'll do you
principal,
better. Hilltop Securities gives us an entire debt book every year. I keep asking for it, and they'll give it to you. And then you can look in the book and say, okay, hey, this is the town hall. Well, where are we right now? Oh, this is the 2021, where we've already paid off $40,000 or $4 million of it or whatever it is, okay? And you can see it right in there.
So John, maybe last question, to your point, so I understand the last page, the principal and interest, but I'm just trying to answer the relationship. So we have $2.2 million
Yes.
coming in. So what's the difference between the 3.6 and the 2?
Well, I gotta go backwards, but the 2.4 is only the ones that you did as a debt exclusion. Others, you might not have done.
Okay, thank
So you still have to pay, well, and I'll give you a perfect example. It was the school, 900,000.
Okay.
Right, is gonna bring you right up. 940
Good.
is gonna push you closer to the 3 million. We didn't debt exclude that, nor the town hall, right? Right. Right.
Thank you. Very clear. Thank you.
And debt exclusion is something that has to be voted at the town.
At the town meeting.
On the electric, yeah.
Yes.
Town meeting and the electric.
Yeah.
You can't do a debt override, a debt exclusion or an override without the town electorate voting for that. So that goes to the general election.
Okay.
All right, so whereas a debt service, an override, a debt payment, a general debt payment can be approved by town meeting, but a debt exclusion or an override have to be approved by the general election.
You'll find that there are very, very few things. I know a lot of people at home that get angry with government that think, oh, they're up there playing games, but there's virtually, I don't know, there's very few things that can be done in the town that don't require votes from the town meeting to do.
That's right.
You know?
So George, at the end of the day, I think like Tom pretty much said, it's very much like a HELOC. We use it as a source of fund, but we have to repay it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
An example of, I can't remember exactly how it was partitioned on the vote, but over 10, 11, 12 years ago, when they tried doing that 5-phase sewer project here in town, and they needed to have that first funding, it went on the ballot as
Yes.
opposed to a town meeting.
Yes.
Because it had to be approved by the townspeople, and it was
Right.
flatly denied.
Right. So, there's the thing, the town, the voter has their hand on the switch. I'm not gonna say 100%, but pretty much 99 point something percent, you know? So it's really hard to sneak anything of any significance through in the structure of government that you've got here.
So, John, is it fair to say at the end of the day, the only difference by not having an override is that the override would carry over into the next year? So it's
The override would, the debt exclusion does the same, it doesn't go to the bottom line of like multiplying out that 2.5% on it, and then ultimately will disappear after some
It has an
point in
expiration
time. There's an expiration date.
if we don't issue more bonds,
Well, yeah, I mean, but then it would be a different bond that you're really paying on.
which will have to be approved.
Yes,
Okay,
right.
got it. Thank you.
Right, all right. So now we get to the cherry sheet portion, which again, why it came in on a pink sheet. This is your state aid. Netted out, the state aid last year, it was higher than this, but we came in here and we said, like, this is way too high, let's bring it down. And I think Bill was the architect of that particular piece. And we brought it down something like 11 or 12% from where it was the year before. Our last check, like Bill said earlier in the meeting, if the state comes in even this year, which it looks like they're at least going to do is even, okay, then we've got a $1.2 million space between us and the state, okay, for the state aid. So we're in good shape there. I'm hoping that that they were coming in. I was a little disappointed, even though we're 1.2. I thought it was going to be up a bit. It's kind of like, you go sit down in a thing and you get your mouth set for steak, and then they tell you it's all gone, but you can have chicken parmesan or something, and it's, okay, I'll eat it, it's good, but I mean, Jesus, I kind of really wanted steak, but, so I was hoping it was like a couple of hundred, so instead of 1.2, maybe it's 1.4 or 1.5. The more the merrier, so that if there's any other discrepancies, we've got that kind of covering us. So we're in pretty good shape on that.
But George, if we get the 1.2 from the state, that's pretty much going to help us offset the lower local receipts from the stadium, because
That's what I mean.
At least 1.5, give or take.
And
Right.
actually, we took a lower position
Yeah.
on the local receipts. We took
And
a
the
lower
state
position
aid.
on the state aid.
Yeah.
Right,
And we took a lower position on new growth.
right.
Right.
So, all three things are, two out of the three are bearing true. The one thing that's not bearing true, and thank God, is the state aid. It's coming in
Right.
better than we thought.
Can I just have a quick question, Bill?
grow.
And I know we're hoping for $2 million for local receipts.
Yeah.
We're hoping in this best case. Assuming that there's 1.5 is what we're going to get from the stadium if nothing happens. So do you think we might have some concerts in next spring to bring it
Yeah,
up to
it
closer to
really
2?
depends in how, it all depends upon how the virus
Yeah.
impacts the rest of the world. And the simple situation is that I think there's a lot of entertainers that are not committing yet to to calendar year 2021 until they see what happens in early 2021, January, February, and, to see if some of the big venues things happen in January, February, and March, then that's more likely the case that we'll see something in FY, in the later part of the fiscal year. The more likely scenario is to see something in the second half of 2021, which will be fiscal year 2022 for us. Okay?
Thank you.
So now we get into the local receipts section. And again, you see the big 10,250,000 up there? That's the thing. Last year, in what was the worst year we've ever had, we came in with 10,900,000. So we came in now, I said last time, a minute ago, I said, I think Bill was the architect of the lowering the state aid. But I remember you guys saying, let's take this down. This was more you. Let's take this down from where we think we go by another 500,000, which we were already lower to begin with. So this is someplace between $700,000 to $1 million lower than, let's say, what the average would have been, okay? So again, we lowballed it, okay? Hopefully between the lowballing here and the lowballing on the state, whatever we might miss out on there, it'll all come out in the wash and everything will be fine. Now, when I get into do you see the part where it says water receipts budget, sewer receipts budget? Somebody said it at the beginning, these are enterprise funds. They are run with their own money, okay? They are fee-oriented. I never worry, when I say I don't worry about it, whatever they come in for with a budget this year, if their budget is $9 million this year for the water, and you folks approve it, then there's going to be $9 million supposedly justified on the opposite side in fee structure. So it doesn't usually have a draw on the town budget that we're going in to do because it's always offset. So if there's so much up here in the revenue side, then there'll be an offset of that on the expense side, okay? And it's kind of a wash, okay? I will mention to you that, do you notice how we segregated out water receipts? It says indirect. That's actually us paying us, okay? That $1.1 million that you're looking at right there is the water department. We calculate up in well, this is how much that their health insurance costs for all the guys that are working there or people that are working there. This is how much it's costing us for retirees. This is how much that it costs for this, that, et cetera, electricity and everything. And they're paying us back. So that's actually good for the town because it's coming from the enterprise fund, which is segregated, and coming back into the town's coffers, if that makes sense. Surplus revenue free cash. Last year, we actually used $900,000 to backfill all these deficiencies that we had. Normally, you try to stay away from it. It was an extraordinary year, and I think this year, we'll have to see where it is, but we're going to try to stay away from that, because you don't want to get dependent on it. Putting free cash into a budget is a lot like a drug addiction. If you put it in there and you kind of start getting dependent on it, okay? And if you don't get off of it real quick, then you're going to want it again, and then how about a little more, and how about a little more, And then you kind of structure yourself around it.
I think one of the things though that the reason why we're only going to use 400,000.
Right.
But I think when the committee decided that you wanted to lower the local receipts and use 500, that's where the extra 500,000 went from free cash. So we actually, there was a method to that madness, so to speak. We're doing that.
Right.
Hopefully, that won't be the case going into fiscal '22.
And the reason for that is that if we assume that this stuff is ever over, by the time we get to that, the hole will be made up if it just goes back to normal. And we won't need the free cash anymore,
So, George, is it fair to say that by definition, free cash is pretty much the excess between what was budgeted and where what's coming in? So let's call it the profit.
Well, yes, for a town, which we are a nonprofit, but it would be equivalent to a profit. There was I think I told you guys about that book by Stuart DeBard. And he used to say, I hate the word free cash because it gives this connotation that like somebody drove by in a truck and it fell off the back, and now we got a whole bunch of free cash. What the free cash actually means is it's free of obligation. We didn't take that amount of money and budget it someplace. It isn't being held as a reserve against bad debt or anything to that effect. It's free of any obligation. That's what it is.
And what bills free cash, where free cash comes from, is unspent revenues from the previous fiscal year, and any excess revenues that were raised in excess of what was planned for the budget. All right, so if we plan to spend $10,200,000 for local receipts, and we actually collected 11, that goes right to free cash.
Absolutely.
Do you follow me? So, and I think
same thing, right? If the expenses are lower,
if your expenses where we plan to expend $1 million and we only spend $750, the balance would flow to free cash. $250 would flow to free cash.
Quick question: what's the free cash amount cumulatively has been through how much over the years?
About $3 to $4 million per year.
$3 to $4 million.
Now it's gone as high as $8, and that was but that was by design. And it was that one exceptional year where we did that.
So to your point, when people see the free cash amount going down, really, it's not just looking at face value that it's bad news, right? One needs to understand why it went down and how it was used, right?
And we have an explanation for every one of those things as to why that's happened.
Yeah.
It's not because we've misappropriated anything or we've overspent something or anything like that. The issue usually is because of situations that we're in right now, where, you had to use it to get yourself through a fiscal year because of unforeseen circumstances that you didn't know were going to come about. Now, the good news for Foxborough is that we always have a free cash balance. There are a lot of towns that have no free cash.
Right.
No free cash at all. And to further make it difficult, they have no stabilization account. And so I think what doesn't get explained a lot is that people think of free cash in town as that's the only savings account we have. That's not true. We have another over $4 million, almost $5 million in the stabilization account that we haven't even touched.
OPEB?
And we have the OPEB account, which is another $10 million.
What's
So
OPEB?
OPEB is the other post-employment benefits account, which is the money that this town, I think we're like one of the top 5 communities in the state right now, in the whole Commonwealth, that are actually paying down that obligation over time.
The
And what it
future
is,
retirement
it
benefits?
pays the health insurance benefits employees when they retire.
Keep in mind, though, we don't necessarily take anything out. We're back, it's almost like we're backing it, because
Yeah, right.
the state wants us to say, you shouldn't be out there
Right.
with nothing backing up the fact that you got all these retirees.
Right.
So it's basically a savings account, but we have to make a certain amount and say, we're keeping this aside in case something happens.
Right. So we're in a good, we've been in that position because the town decided when they collected the meals tax, that would be obligated strictly for payment of the OPEB obligation and also for payment of roads. So that's why our roads get addressed every year, and our OPEB has been paid down. Now, this past year, we decided not to do that because we anticipated that revenue wasn't going to come in, and it hasn't been coming in. So guess what? And what's good about it is that we separated it out for that purpose. So we're not hurting ourselves on the local receipt side because of that.
One thing that is and I mean, it's a topic for another night, our own policies, how we try to go over them during the year. Policy actually says they want a recharge of $2 million every year on the free cash. Well, even now, I mean, even as where it is now, it isn't certified, so I don't want to make the number, but it looks like about 3.2, 3.3, something like that, is what it's going to be. So, I mean, we're still making what the voted policy was over the years.
Stephanie, you have a question?
Yeah, I think the answer is, I was curious what we had in free cash. And so, in the OPEB, that 10 million, what you're saying is that's what we've already paid into the 32, or is it like around
Right.
32 or something?
Yeah, so the obligation initially was $61 million, and because we paid that down, the obligation is now down to about $30 million.
Yes.
Okay.
So, all right, so.
And we're on track, if I recall Randy explaining to us, by
2035. 2035.
Okay.
Now, the plan is right now that we have been making our pension payments, and if we continue to make our pension payments to the county, we're required to do that. But that's due to be retired by 2030, and after that, the idea would be to double up on the OPEB obligation and pay that off by 2035.
Yeah.
Right, so then,
schedule.
we may push it out a year now, because unless we make that up
Yeah.
with the payment that we didn't make this year.
So if by chance things don't come back like we hope they will, is there a possibility we may not make a payment next year, but we're still in good shape with
Yes.
what we've done previously? So
what it would mean, Stephanie, is this, is that if we don't make the payment this year, and we haven't ruled that question out, by the way, we've said that if money does come in, we might be able to make some payment, even if it's not the full $1.1 million obligation, we might put some money towards it. If that happens, then it'll be 2036 instead of 2035, and subsequent, if we did for a second year, it'll be 2037. All right, so, but that's really what it is, that's what it is. We're still in good shape.
The time I spent on advisory committee, it was every year was told that we are in very good shape compared to other communities. And just one other quick thing, the only reason why I would like to see us even stay very conservative, at least for one more year, is, I heard on the news tonight, they've already decided to cancel the Pro Bowl, which is the end of January to February. So things are starting to, you know.
Tumble.
Cascade.
Yeah, and you know something, unfortunately, because of where we live, we have a small window for those concerts because of the weather.
Right.
If it was Miami, you have year round,
Yeah.
so if that starts to push, like Bill mentioned, artists aren't gonna commit.
Right.
If things are starting to push and I mean, obviously for an artist to tour, there's a lot of work put into that, and if you know,
right.
it's gonna be something that's not like, oh, I think I'll just tour next year.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I just think, unfortunately, this may fall over
Yeah.
longer than we probably anticipated
Yeah.
when we were having these discussions, you know.
I mean, it really depends, a lot depends upon when we can see a vaccine, and
Yeah.
it really does, a lot depends on that, so.
Very quickly, circling back around on that, I think we're a country mile ahead of about 95% of the towns out there. My previous town, we had a whopping $50,000 in there, and it was tracking, it was the same size town, remember, just because you got a better base up here, but they owed pretty much the same amount. We had about 50,000 towards their 30 million, so.
So the last point, and maybe this is more for our new members in terms of how the free cash, which you've just well explained, is created over the years. Wouldn't you say that it's a catch-22? At the end of the day, every year we go through, let's call it a very rigid budget process. We look at what's coming in, what's being spent. We tend to also look at what's being spent carefully to make sure it's balanced, but more importantly, we try to really go very firm on it. Over the years, that free cash has been created by, let's call it,
Conservative.
yes.
Yeah.
So, wouldn't you say that in a way it's a catch-22? How do we go in the past years very, very firm in terms of firm spend, and we would not have that free cash now accumulated to spend, right?
Right.
So I think it's very important for the new members to understand that concept. And I call it pay me now or pay me later.
That's right, that's right.
So when we talk about the annual spend matching the annual revenue,
Yes.
it's one thing, but as importantly, I'm not saying creating a cushion, but very much like life, if we don't basically
Right.
predict what will be a little amount and over time will accumulate,
Yes.
like right now, will be cut, right?
Yes.
Is that a fair
That's correct.
statement?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the fact is also, the other thing that plays into that is that because we do have the stadium here, that, you know, we do have years where they do better than other years. And so when that happens, that falls right to the bottom line, and then we're able to store that money away. So, you know, we've had $3 million plus years where that has really fallen to the bottom line. So when we're gonna have a few lean years, that the fact that we tucked that money away is a good thing. And so,
All right, I'll try to whip through these other available funds. We take for the ambulance fund every year. We put $1.4 million in there. We put a little bit more in last year, but it's always, I think it was $1.2 million the year before.
Right.
It comes out of the fire chief has the ambulance fund where he's, every ambulance run, it goes into that account. It can go to offset the fire department.
just one point on that, there was a concern throughout the year that when we went to COVID, that the ambulance runs might slow down. So we were tracking that pretty closely to see where they are, and we really haven't slowed down at all. I mean, there was a small window, or about a 30-day period where it slowed down, but then after that, it's right back up to where it was before. So.
Okay.
The recreation revolving is another form of indirect cost. We may have to kind of forego that till the end of the year this year because they're almost out of business, but the water department, we did use some of they have a certified free cash just like we did, and we offset their budget with it. With them, it all tracks, whatever they come up with at the end, it all folds back up into the same spot. By using 10% of the free cash against it, it simply makes it so that if there is a shortfall during the year, we don't have to run back to a town meeting to get the money again. Here's the, hello? Did somebody?
Dennis,
Who, oh,
just a
sorry.
question on the water. Has there been any revenue impact because of the extended water ban?
They are, at least from last year, they were down slightly, but they were fine. I'm probably looking at it more, I don't know whether it's the extended water ban or whether, I mean, remember, yeah, there's probably people not sprinkling and stuff, but then there was also, weren't they working on the,
3 wells.
the 3 wells, and that turned everything off there. And then, I mean, I guess, there were
also-
a lot of swimming pools and things going, on this summer either, huh?
Also, everybody's stuck at home.
That's what I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
you're not utilizing that water at your company anymore.
Right.
Well, that's absolutely true.
Right.
It's,
Right.
Dennis is a very good point, and
Right.
Brian just, it was gonna took the words out of my mouth there. What happened was more people were staying at home, so they're utilizing their own home water resources more than they would if they were at work.
The most interesting piece on here is overlay surplus that we were using.
Once every 3 days.
And you notice we used $1 million last year. We put that $1 million to, specifically, if we were gonna put it in there, we put it towards the debt service, and you can see how it all adds up there, 61, 450, 488. That's where that $1 million went, right to the debt service. Now, so you don't get confused, we just used $1 million of overlay up here, okay? Well, this is revenue we used, okay? But then you're gonna see on the bottom, there's a $1.1 million overlay. Well, that's the new overlay we're trying to raise for the next year. So it keeps recharging itself,
Right.
okay? So, again, I think as we move forward, at least for now, we'll probably need that for just putting it towards the $900,000 school project there that we didn't have anything for until we kind of stabilize ourselves again.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, remember I told you that there are accounts that you can just close out? See that excess close out there? That was some money left from a few years back of an insurance thing. Okay, so now we're into the expenditures. I'm gonna make this real easy. Appropriations, water, and total sewer, right? If you take your Article 4, go right to the end of it, okay? Where's he getting this number from? Very last number on the page. Where did these numbers come from? This is what you guys worked on all last year. Okay, I came in and gave a budget, the fire chief came in and gave a budget, the police chief came in and gave a budget. You guys approved these budgets, we went to town meeting with an $83,952,000, 75 of which was town, 6.7 was water, and 1.6 was sewer. So that's where that number came from. So it was basically everything that you guys sat down for night after night and went through with everybody in the all the various department heads, Bill and everybody else that was present. Finally, there's that overlay I told you we were gonna re-raise next year. And then, what's that snow and ice deficit? That's the one place that the state allows you to overrun. Last year it was 99,000, so what you're doing is you're basically raising it the next year, and it prevents you from having to keep going back to town meetings to catch up.
Do you recall what we put in for the budget for that?
It became 99,000.
No, but how much did we pay originally? What was the original budget for it?
250 or 300, right?
It was like,
Okay, pardon me, I lost track, I thought you meant
Yeah,
for the deficit.
350,000, I want to say,
Yeah.
something in that range.
There's a rule with this, okay?
Yep,
That if you're gonna do that, they don't want you to up it.
Right.
So it's always stayed the same, and it's gone up, the deficit goes up and down as how bad the year was.
Right, I was just trying to remember, that goes into free cash? The difference between them?
If we don't spend the full amount, then if it's $350,000
Yep,
and we only spend $250,000,
yep,
100,000 would go into free cash.
okay,
all
that's
right?
what
Right.
But if we go over that, the state allows you to raise it. It's the only
The next
account that
year.
allows you to do
The
that.
following,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, snow and ice was 216,300.
Okay.
It's on this article, it won't be. So, there you have it, right? Now, if I just move forward one more page, this is all of it in a nutshell. Here's your top. Tax levy, 53 million. State aid, 7.4 million. Local receipts, 19 million. We used free cash, 900. Other available funds, 377, coming down to 85 million, 058. Expenditures, we just said what they are, 83 million, 852. Okay, that's the bottom of your budget. And then the only other two things that are getting raised is $1,100,000 for overlay and $99,000 for the snow and ice deficit. Comes down to 85,051, or we had a surplus of $6,000, $6,799. So, assuming all these things come in, we should be, in pretty good shape. One last thing I'll throw out because it's getting late. The overlay surplus, what is overlay? It's actually a provision for bad debt. In any business that you're in, if you're making widgets or whatever, you've got to assume that if I'm predicting I've got $10 million worth of sales, probably a certain amount of it, a couple $100,000, somebody ain't gonna pay you. They assume in any one particular year that you're gonna have people that are gonna apply for abatements. The real name of this overlay is provisions for abatements and exemptions. So they're saying if you've got a $53 million tax rate, okay, you're setting aside 1.1 and saying we probably ain't gonna pick that up. And then if you do get it, how the state allows you to release it is if it would, I'm just gonna make this easy. Let's say we had 50 million with a $1 million dollar thing. So now we've only spent 49. If I got 49,100,000, I can now release 100,000 of that overlay. If I got 49,200,000, I can now release 200,000 of that overlay. So it's a provision for in the event that somebody doesn't pay or they abate it.
Which can help with the free cash, right?
Absolutely, because right.
So for
The
next fiscal
the
year,
assessors, the assessors are the ones that release that.
for the next fiscal year, for the upcoming fiscal year, are we gonna put more on overlay just in case?
We do it
We
every
did it
year.
again,
Yeah,
right there, we
yeah.
just did
We will for
1.1.
next year as well.
And we're planning on that again this year,
Okay.
all right?
The question, how come this is not, let's say, approved at town meeting?
Because ultimately, when you do the tax recap sheet, when you put that number in, okay, there's change out there. So when you push the button, it automatically goes to the overlay, okay?
Yeah.
So it adjusts the overlay up and down depending upon what it needs to make it work. So if you voted something, then you're stuck with it. Now you got to go back to, wait a minute, I'm off by 50,000 or something like that,
Because that's a 5-6 month
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
interval,
Right.
whatever you wanna call it.
Right.
Thank you.
Hopefully that kind of, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, finish that up.
No, go ahead. I'm good. I'm good.
So revenue sources, so when we take a look at all the revenue sources, it sounds like local receipts
Is the
one
wild
that we're
card.
most worried about.
Wild card, yeah, that's the
It's the
one.
wild card, yeah.
Okay, that's the wild card, okay.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on when we'll have better guidance? I know you said only 1 quarter. How long will it take before we really understand the impact of the restaurants shutting down?
Well,
Right?
what's happened with the restaurants is that we've been working, just so everybody knows too, it's important that we've been working with Patriot Place, we've been working with the downtown businesses, we've been working with restaurants around the town to try and help them stay open as often as much as possible during the pandemic.
Yep.
And we provide them with latest guidance and direction from the state, as well as help them promote their businesses as much as possible. So right now, I don't think we're as bad as we thought we were going to be. We're not, a lot of the businesses, I think where we're going to see an impact most likely will be during the next several months, where we see, we're a reduced spacing. Right now, they're down to 50% capacity. You'll probably see that carry through until March. And then April, you'll start to see people start moving back outside again. But if you stay at 50% capacity, most will likely will happen, they'll try to make that up with takeout service.
Right.
And a lot of people have been doing that. It's interesting, some of the businesses, believe it or not, have actually done better in this scenario than others.
Yeah.
And surprisingly so. I was really.
Like local pizza shops and such.
Well, local pizza, but also like some of the high-end steakhouses.
Oh, sure.
Have done
Yeah.
better, because people they still want to have a nice meal, even if it means they have to go home to eat it. They'll still do that. So it means that, so to that extent, we'll try and do everything we can, but the bottom line, Brian, we won't know until we see next year. But the fact that we lowered those numbers as much as we did, I think put us in a much better position.
Okay, good.
George, the last item in this summary, the other raises and appropriations, $1,134,000 for roads.
Oh, you see that little,
Yeah.
we had been doing that the years before, I just footnoted it, but you note that there's nothing actually in the column.
Yep.
It's zero. So what we had done, like, that was where, did one of them say, one of them says OPEB, right?
Yeah, $1 million for OPEB.
That's what we had done the year before, and then we had put like $300,000 or whatever the other
Towards
number
the
was.
roads, right.
For the roads. I footnoted it just so you could see, well, somebody was gonna ask that, what do we usually do with that? Well, that's what we had done the year before, but we forewent it last year.
Because we didn't think we would raise the money in this fiscal year to support that.
So is there, for roads, is there separate budgeting processes? You do
Yes.
expenses, then you get.
So let me just, you raise a good question, so that's a really good question. So the roads account, so because we didn't spend $300,000 on the roads, doesn't mean we won't fix roads all year. We still get $700,000 a year, close to that, from the state on, for road repairs.
Chapter 90.
Chapter 90 money, they call it.
So that's state money, and this is if the town.
This is the town's appropriation to match that. So we effectively put about $1 million towards our road program every year. This year, we kept it at $700,000 because it was a difficult year.
Oh, sorry, Jan, sorry, go ahead.
In my opinion, very well done.
Yes.
Internal presentation. I'm
Good.
going to speak for everybody else. It's very well done.
Really, really great.
Okay. Anybody on the screen up there? We okay? A lot of information, but hopefully that was helpful.
As you go along, I've told Bernard and Larry, I mean, nobody needs an engraved invitation. You can just call into the office, and if you got a question, we'll try to answer it for you.
Well, maybe Marie would like to take a minute just to talk about the new budget process, the new tools we're going to use this year. So would you mind talking about that? Why don't you come up?
I was actually going to say, so I've been working with the CARES Act and the FEMA grants. We recently just finalized the FEMA application. We applied for about $310,000. Of that, we'll get 75% from FEMA, and the other 25% will come from the CARES Act.
That's for the town, though, right? Make sure you know the town.
I'm sorry,
310.
what's
Because it was the school piece,
what's
right?
Marie's position in the town?
Marie's a director of account. So.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And then as far as the budget process, I've been working with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with ClearGov. It's this company that, when they first came out, they came up with this transparency module. So if you actually go to cleargov.com, you can look up the town of Foxborough, and what you'll see out there is our actual revenues and expenses for the last 4 fiscal years. In addition to that transparency module, they have a budget builder module, they have a forecasting module. So what we basically did is we purchased the modules for the budget builder. So for FY21, you guys got that binder with very small fonts. I had a monster spreadsheet with like 50 tabs. So we purchased the ClearGov module, which what we'll do for the FY22 budget process, it'll be an online interactive process. So what we'll be doing is we'll be taking a copy of the FY21 budget. It will all be online. Each one of you will have a login, which you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to see where we are in the budget process. And it's all real time. So it eliminates the mistakes you could have with the spreadsheet if you have a formula that's wrong or if a number gets deleted.
Wow.
So
Or you're
everything-
using an older one and somebody else is looking at a newer one.
Yeah.
And,
Some things would drive us all
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
That's
Fiscal
cool.
year 22.
22, yeah.
Fiscal 22.
Yeah.
Okay, not 20.
Yeah, I'll be, over the next couple weeks, just working on a couple last minute things. But you guys will all have your own login. So, and then when we have the budget meetings, you'll be able to log on. If you have laptops, you could open it up and look at the budget through there instead of having, a binder with
Yeah.
a small font that you
Why
can't
don't
even
do a
read.
little tutorial for you,
Right.
so you can train.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very,
they,
it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do, it's not like Munis where you have to pay for training. I mean, you just let
I'm
them
just
know.
excited to not have this amount of material. It's like having it electronic will be spectacular.
And the goal too is to eventually build an actual budget book that's based on the GFOA guidelines. And we could do, like I said, there's a forecasting module as well. And basically what ClearGov does is it downloads our data from Munis. So I send them a file. I could send them a file daily, weekly, monthly, and everything is mapped in the background. So all the data gets updated in real time, and we could do a forecast. We could say we wanted to do a 10-year forecast for the revenue, and it would do it for you. Obviously, we could play around with it, but it's all web-based, which is the important thing, and it's all real time, so.
It might even be nice for us, but then think about it from a standpoint of a guy or a woman at home. They can get on their laptop and, if they were watching the thing, oh yeah, there it is. And they can see what we're talking. I mean, instead of trying to figure out where we are, Yeah.
One of the things that, I'll mention this because, and I'm not gonna try and embarrass Marie, but one of the reasons why we brought her here was because she came from Concord, Mass, which Concord, Mass is probably one of the best top finance departments I've seen anywhere in the state. I mean, they just do things really, really well. But one of the things that they did there was every year they built a budget that was a candidate for the
Best, yeah.
the best budget
Yeah.
book in the state and actually in the country. They actually work on that aspect. So there's a GFOA budget award, which has always been sort of like a goal that I had it, that Randy had it before me, and I think George as well. So we're really actively going to pursue that this year and see if that comes out.
Cool.
Good. Marie, I have two quick questions. When do you think we'll get our login credentials? Roughly.
So I wanted to,
I'm asking because I'm trying to set the next meeting and
Sure.
stuff. So just-
yeah, what I can do is, I'm just trying to work out a couple last minute things with the mapping. Because the good thing about ClearGov is you could create copies of a budget and just call it a test. And, I could send out, you would just get an email saying Marie's inviting you to collaborate with this budget. And my plan is before we actually even start the FY22 budget to create a test version that we could all play around with. And I'm hoping to do that in the next couple weeks.
So by
When is your
December-
next meeting?
Well, we'll decide after this. So is it safe to say maybe by December, everybody should have their own?
Oh, yeah,
credentials? Okay.
definitely before that, yeah.
Then my second question is, can you elaborate a little on, I know you're talking about you working with FEMA and CARES 75. Can you tell us what were you trying to get from them?
Yeah, so with the FEMA, they're both federal funds. With FEMA, when you have a disaster, normally it would be a snowstorm, hurricane, something like that. But with COVID, they came out and said, well, we have this aid available. So
This is in addition to the CARES Act?
yes, yep. So the way it works is, so you have the CARES Act, the money that's available to you is based on your population. With FEMA, what they do is, so each one of them has certain categories of expenses. And so FEMA will only reimburse you up to 75% of whatever the expense is. With the CARES Act, they cover the other 25%. And the CARES Act also covers, like, for example, we had to spend almost $700,000 on laptops for the schools. FEMA doesn't cover that stuff, but the CARES Act
100%,
does.
100% on that one.
Yes. The thing with both, so with the CARES Act, they want you to go out for FEMA reimbursement first before you request money from them. Like I said, just yesterday, we submitted the application. We had a consultant that came in who actually worked for FEMA previously, which was great, because she looked through everything that I had, and because back in June, I put together everything for the CARES Act for the $1 million that we received. I had everything already all laid out. So it was easy to do the FEMA application because we were submitting the same expenses. So we finalized that. It was $310,000. Of that, we'll get the 75%, and the other 25 will come from the CARES Act. So out of the 1.5 that were eligible for the CARES, we've spent about 1.1. So there's still 400,000 to play with, and we're looking at ways to see how we could spend.
Is the FEMA money's already, the FEMA's money, it's already spent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with FEMA, it's actual expenses. With CARES Act, they allow you to estimate. So say if, like the fire department, for example, they wanted to get a ventilator machine, so like when you're in an ambulance, you're not breathing the same air.
Sure.
So FEMA, they haven't purchased it yet. They have a quote for it. With FEMA, they actually said that that's not something that's eligible. But with the CARES Act, you could submit estimates. What will happen at the very end is they'll come back and say, okay, we gave you 1.5 million. Show us that you spent that 1.5.
I was making a joke at the beginning when I said that she shook them down on the ambulance, but she got it so early and got it in writing. Then they came back and changed their mind, and well, Jesus, I mean, she's showing them this. Well, I guess we'll let that one go, and we'll cover that, but we ain't doing any others. Forget it. So.
So is everything for the town being coordinated through the finance department to submit the application? So did the health department have any of their own stuff they had to still go through you guys, or was Pauline responsible for doing certain things with coordination with her
Maria was the
department?
point person in terms of all the FEMA and CARES Act money requests. Fire department, police department, DPW, Board of Health, everything went through Marie. So she coordinated with the state and federal officials. And then we also had a person that worked with us part-time that was an expert in this kind of stuff, that helped advise her. And that was also paid for by the CARES Act as well. So we're able to get that service free of charge.
Did FEMA override everything that was, or is there also MEMA funds too from Massachusetts, or there's no process for that?
There was no money from MEMA. There was strictly FEMA and the CARES Act.
Anything regarding MEMA for the four-town civil? Was there anything that came through there?
I don't mean to.
I think back in the springtime, we were told by the director that we had fallen into some good money, so we're ahead of it.
So that's a different set of rules, different set of funding, though. That's okay. So just a quick highlight on that situation. Semrick is going to open its doors. We're cutting the ribbon on that November 17th. All right, so the new building is going to be open for business. We're going to be actually operating, we think, by December 8th with all four towns operating at the new facility. And then we also are meeting with another community who's expressed interest to joining us as well. I think, this is a calculated guess at this point. I think there's probably another 3 or 4 communities that may want to join us after that. So that'll actually further drive down the cost to all of us collectively. Now, what the Semrick director was talking about, Rob Vidone, was that there was money that came in from the state 911 commission that said that they actually upped the ante on that, and they were able to provide more money to Foxborough or the Semrick region, because we had been that far advanced in our process. And so we think, which was able to drive the cost to all the cities, all the communities down. We were paying, just a few years ago, we were paying close to $1 million for regional for dispatch. We're now paying about $300,000 a year. So
that's good.
Yeah, so for first responders, I wasn't sure whether MEMA was coordinating anything on the state level, or if it was still also FEMA, or if there was anything there at all.
Yeah, MEMA really doesn't have any extra money unless the state is able to appropriate, and they've been dealing with the governor and the lieutenant governor have been working with cities and towns on different grant programs, but nothing really through MEMA.
Okay.
That's strictly been for any like natural disasters, like like a hurricane or a tornado or something like that.
Sorry if this has been mentioned before, I'm just trying to digest. On the local receipt, the 19.1, and when Brian asked the question, so big picture, when we say that this is probably the weakest, not the riskiest, the weakest amount in terms of what's coming in, when do we think we're going to be, or it's one of these hard things, we just have to monitor it as it comes? I'm just trying to see, do we have a 2 million gap, or is it just, we are just waiting?
We kind of have to go along. I mean, as I think it was Brian mentioned, it's not a even amount of money. It's not like if we said $12 million, we're going to get 1 million every month, okay? The state kind of is like that. But on the local receipts, there's a lot of stuff that's back-ended, like, the big stadium check won't come in until, I think it's December or so, or maybe the next quarter.
It'll probably be the next quarter,
The
sometime
next
in March.
quarter,
Probably
okay.
in March, probably.
Which okay. But I'm thinking quarterly, so that would be the December quarter, it would fall in that area. The big amounts for excise tax usually flow towards the end of the year, Then, like you might see an uptick in building if this is over with, by the spring, and then everybody starts building stuff, or some of these things, then the inspectors have to go out. Although Mark did send me a thing today. I just got 60 grand, so we're so I mean,
To that point, I'm just thinking, let's say Plan B. Hopefully, Plan D doesn't happen, but let's say we are short, but we have the expenses committed. So would we just have to remit again, and how do we? I'm thinking Plan B, or we rather not think about it.
There would be a couple of options, okay? Assuming we were running over and we can see that this is where we're running over, okay? Then we could do what Bill did last year. He put a cap on it and said, wait, I want everybody to, hold off, just pay,
slow down your spending and,
Right.
just
Now,
put a freeze on any new hires or anything like that at that point, any replacement hires at that point.
The second piece of it is, remember, the one thing that, if there's a silver lining in this thing, and I hate to sound like misery enjoying company, but it's not just Foxborough. So if we're starting to run really bad, okay, into the hole, then it's pretty safe to say there's going to be a lot of others going in the hole. Last year, they felt like we didn't have to do it, but they said if you run a deficit, they came up with a thing that they said, we're going to allow you to pay it off over a 3-year period. Not unlike, there was something, do you remember that teacher's salary deferral about 20 years ago? And they allowed them to go up a certain amount of money, and then they said, now you can pay it off almost like a bond issuance by building it into your budget for the next 3 years. I can't say as I know for sure, but these things are going to be out there. I keep going by the same argument that I have. If I'm going home tonight and I don't have my cell phone and I break down at the side of the road, I better pray that there's a state trooper coming by. Otherwise, I got a lot of walking to do, and in my shape, that's not a very good thing. But at the same time, if I go home and a tractor trailer is jackknifed on 495 and there's a backup for 5 miles, all I got to do is wait, and the fire trucks are going to be there, and it's going to. Same thing here. If it was us and it was poor management on our part, I'd say we're in a lot of trouble. Okay, but when the whole world is going down the same drain, okay, then we're something is going. They're going to come up with other ways of helping us along.
More federal aid.
Right.
Federal aid, yeah.
Thank you.
It's good.
My prediction is that you probably won't see much happen between now and the election. But like I said, afterwards, I think that all bets are off as to what will happen. In terms of a package will come to fruition between the Republicans and Democrats. Will figure out, and they'll get it back, because whether it's a Democratic House or a Democratic White House or a Republican White House, either way, there still has to be, the need is still going to be there regardless. So you have to look at it from that perspective. And I do think, as George and I are ones who we look to the market for a direction on that. And we're not seeing the market taking huge dips right now because everybody's anticipating that to happen.
Coming up, yeah.
So I think that's why we're somewhat encouraged by that move. I also look at, we look at telltale signs. I mean, it's sort of like reading the tea leaves in this way. We see that the town of Foxborough is still a very viable place for people to live. We're not seeing huge drops in the sales. If anything, it's really hard to find a place to live here. So therefore, and the school system is still doing a great job of trying to keep the schools open. Our operation here opened in July. How many other town halls did you see open in July? I think we were one of the few in all of Central Mass.
Yes.
In this part of the state, to actually be open for business. So we're doing everything we can to keep the place running. And then even the people that couldn't be here every day were still doing their work at home. So we didn't really see a dip in terms of productivity here. Everybody, public works, fire, police, everybody did their work. Council on Aging. How many senior centers do you think are open right now? We've been open for a few months now.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark's doing a terrific job. We even had doing a tent outside, doing stuff being creative. I think the only area we can't do things really is recreation, but even they're doing stuff right now. But in terms of active recreational things, we have to be really careful.
It's funny, Bill, even this afternoon, that thing that you had us go on to, about, planning, there were like 150 managers and stuff on there, and there was a number of them that said, no, we're not open. We're not going to open for another couple of months or whatever. It's like, geez, why? Do something, but we're not going to do it,
Very good.
Okay. Any further questions for management?
Then on 9 o'clock, 2 hours.
No.
Quick question, Bill. If by chance some other communities do come into the summer, would they also be sharing a cost of what was already put up by you guys to come in? So it's not like, okay, you guys spent the money, the building's up, we're going and...
So most of the money that was spent on all the money that was spent on the building was paid for by the state.
Okay.
So there's no upfront cost to doing that, but what's the state has actually helped, the State 911 Commission is actually incentivizing communities to go in that direction, and they're saying that we will not charge you for your operating costs for 3 years to get into it, because that's the biggest challenge for getting into it. So that's why our costs have gone down rather dramatically as well.
Be a win-win for everybody.
And the only money we're paying right now is really to put into like a free cash account so that we can actually pay for any unanticipated capital expenses that might come along.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
George, thank you.
very
This is
much.
great. Marie, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Good luck. Let's have a good year, right?
Yeah.
Hope so.
All right. All right. Thank you.
All right, guys, the last item on the agenda is we need to decide when we want to meet again.
Right. What do you think?
At this point, I'm proposing
2 weeks?
we meet at least once a month, but a month from now, that, the last Wednesday, it's a short month, it's Thanksgiving. So I'm thinking maybe we should just skip October, November completely and go to the first week of December.
Okay.
The first Wednesday in December. So we go an extra month, but I just need feedback from people.
Just based on my experience, I just don't think that we should be apart that long.
Okay.
There's other things that we could be addressing, if not just talking about what we'd like to see in the anticipation of the election season and when the state finally does come out with its final budget. I think if Congress and whatever, and the president decide they're going to pump something out just prior to the election because they think it's going to be advantageous for either of them. I mean, there's that $1.8 trillion sitting there that's been proposed that hasn't been acted on or is refusing to be acted on, but that could be acted on the day after the election too. And then we're sitting around for another month while those type of things might be coming in saying, you know what, this is how it's going to get apportioned. We might want to have some, not say, but at least an understanding as to where we stand as a town with regards to that kind of stuff being released. So taking 2 months off, I think, is a little long.
No, not 2 months.
I was going to say 2 or 3 weeks. Well, 3 weeks will be the day after the election. We want to get together one more time before the election?
Well, no. Here's the thing. November 11th it's a Wednesday. That's Veterans Day. It's a holiday. So places
That's right,
closed.
it's on the day, right?
Right, so 4th, nah, I think the day after election is too early. So the next option that we could do
The week
is
after.
the 18th. We can do November 18th, or we just have to skip until.
That's the week before Thanksgiving. I prefer to get,
November
we get together
18th.
before Thanksgiving anyways, yeah.
Right, November 18th is the last one, so
I'd be fine with that.
everybody's
November.
okay to meet on November 18th?
Yeah, I mean, Larry, you can always get it on everyone's calendar, and if we feel we don't need to meet, you can always cancel it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So we could propose the 18th, but then if there's nothing to action.
Right.
Right? Is that how it works?
But remember, there's not a whole lot's
Well-
there's no special town meeting, so there's nothing to be actioned on. But
Correct.
there's still stuff that we could, she makes it available for us to get online, to be able to see the budgeting process to be able to
She
get on there.
thinks it's gonna be closer to December. I don't think we're gonna see it before that. And I know you talked about the state budget is still up in the air. The state is not gonna, I don't think we're gonna see it until end of November at the earliest. So you're right, you have a valid point, that the state budget is.
So can we play it by ear then?
We can. So
You say.
here's the thing, we'll either do the 18th, I'll know within the next couple of weeks, because Bill will give Bernard and myself some kind of update, so
So
we'll know what's coming.
that's 5 weeks you're talking.
Right.
Why
So-
don't we also book a December date then?
Yes, so it's either the 18th or December 2nd. So.
I'd
so-
vote for both.
Okay.
I just, like I said.
Tom just
I-
likes
I-
being here.
No, I have never been on a committee here where we have gone one meeting in the fall, and that's it. We've always had other things that come up to discuss, and it's just, if it's even just to catch up with where we stand and compare where we left off in June, and to get an assessment there and some discussion here, so we have, I wouldn't say camaraderie, but at least an understanding of where people are, their perspective of where they're in town, personal lives, as well as what they're hearing from their neighbors and stuff. I think to have that discussion is important. And
I'm just asking a question. Have you ever had a fall where you haven't had a special town meeting?
yeah, there's been a couple in the past. Yeah, it's it's only come on in the last couple of years that it's almost become a regular. Every year there's something that's come up, but yeah, five, 6, 7 years ago.
We've had a fall town meeting for 25 years.
What?
We've had a fall town meeting for 25 years.
There's been a couple of years where we didn't.
Here's the thing, since no one's here, I'll let you know. The reason we didn't call for an earlier meeting is because there were a lot of unknowns. Everything was up in the air. I talked to Frank about it too, and Frank said, you know what? Give the members a break, because next spring, come spring, it's gonna be busy. We're gonna be in a time constraint. So he said, if there's really no need for a meeting, meaning nothing's going on, no numbers to talk about, plus no special town meeting, because we found out about no special town meeting. I think I told everybody too early on.
Right.
Most likely, we're not gonna have one. So Frank just said, take it easy, give everybody a break, start in October is fine. So I think starting today, it's not late, because I believe my first year on AdCom, we didn't start till, I remember something in October, it was dark, it was close to Halloween.
Yeah.
So the point is, I hear your point, so we could have a meeting on November 18th.
Okay.
If we have things to discuss. If not, we'll definitely have one on December 2nd.
Okay.
All right, so at this point, if there's going to be a meeting on November 18th, I need to announce it to the town at least a week before. So you will know by the second week, early on in November, whether we're going to have the meeting on the 18th. And
I guess just,
hopefully we have more, we're also waiting for, I don't know if you guys are aware, but George and Bill, they're trying to finalize the first quarter, the first 3 months of the fiscal year, to see how we're doing in reference to the last 12 months ago. And obviously, from starting in the beginning, he said they're not done yet. So I want AdCom to hear that number. And
Well, also after November 1st is when the next taxes are due. So
Well, people are going to pay
we'll have that type of information too.
I mean, what George and Bill trying to do is to run the expenses, the local receipts. Real estate taxes, usually people,
Consistent.
the bank will pay either way, so they're not wrong. The real estate for taxes for personal property will come in. It's the other stuff, the local receipts, the state aid, which we don't know, and local growth. The growth is not happening. We know that too. So, the more time we give them to close the books, and then the next meeting we'll have a better number. So that's why I'm, as much as I want to have the meeting on November 18, I want them to be able to come in and give us stuff instead of saying, oh, we're still closing the books. It's like,
Right.
Makes sense.
but I hear your point, Tom.
Yeah, my fear is that everything gets so compressed that it ended up becoming choked. So if there's any ideas that members might have, not so much for advocacy, but at least for preparation or proposing stuff, so that we're not just reactionary,
Absolutely.
that we're actionary as well.
That's why all along, if anyone has anything to add, or you want Bernard and I to talk to Bill or anyone, send us an email. I'd be more than happy to bring it up to Bill. But if we don't hear from you, we're just going to assume let's go with the plan we have in place. Stephanie?
I was just gonna say that, you'll have a few new members too, so, I bet you everyone will say, it's like the first year, even though you go through the process, you're still a little lost, and the second year you start to get it, by the third year, all of a sudden it, starts to click. So, maybe not where Tom's going, but you guys, you may brainstorm and say, hey, listen, we could maybe just kind of get the new people, because, like you said, it's gonna be crazy in the spring, because you'll have any warrant articles that they had thought about for the fall. So, may have a spring not only with a complicated budget, but you could have, 30 warrant articles, because everything will pile. And the other thing I was gonna say is also, make sure that we get something going between you guys and the Board of Selectmen. I know we've talked about the last couple of years of maybe having a mutual meeting, so we won't have that divide that we've had, the last couple of years. It'd be good for us all to be on the same page. And then even if we don't agree, but we've had a couple of years that the Board of Selectmen are here and the advisory committee is here, and even if we're not going to be here, let's get here and not, across. So I'm looking forward to meeting with you guys, and honestly, my time with you guys, I think, is making it much easier for me at the Board of Selectmen's table. So just like, I don't know, is it on
George,
there?
no. George handed this out tonight with the dates for the budget stuff. So I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to reach out to the Board of Selectmen chair. Doc, and try to have a joint meeting with AdCom and Select.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice for us to have one that we're truly a mutual meeting, that we're having discussion with each other. And I think we all get on the same page. It's going to be a rough spring for both, for the committee and the board. So it'd be nice for us to kind of stuff by each other before we actually dig into that budget.
Stephanie, actually, to your point, one of the things that just came to my mind that was not addressed there, I'm sure we will going forward, is CIP. That seems to always be a point of, let's call it, we sometimes tend to agree to disagree. So you're right on CIP because of the amount. So good point.
But Stephanie, don't scare away the two new members about how big this weight's gonna be.
Hey, listen, I think Jack might be here because I told him he should
He
get
is.
involved.
He's up there.
Yeah,
He's on down there. Yeah,
I
he's
know.
on. Yeah.
When we talked after the election, I said, make sure you get involved, because first name on
John.
We talked on election day a
Yep.
little bit. No, it's an interesting process to learn. You think you know how the town is running, and then you get here and you hear it, and it's like, oh my God, I didn't know this is really how it goes. But
A couple of things I want to add for the new AdCom members and then everybody else too, is that we asked Bill, okay, what's the contracts? There's two contracts going on. It's the chicken or the egg. Bill is having a hard time finalizing a contract because we don't know what the state is going to be, so he doesn't want to overcommit. So take that step. There's no contract in place. Usually the reason having a November meeting is to vote on the contract, but we're not going to have. He's not going to have a finalized contract. We're not going to have a town meeting. So that's one. Second thing I asked him is, okay, what about warrant articles? This, street change, all this stuff. He said there's really nothing. He said no one's trying to push any development, anything through it. And I was told at that point? No, it's really not going to be a lot. He doesn't think it's going to be a lot in spring either, but, things could change, things could change.
Water department got its 9 million last spring, so they're not.
That's another 9 million coming
They're not coming around. They're not coming around again.
But, because
I
there's
think the
no
system's
articles,
on, though.
no budget to vote on, that's why, and not because Bill doesn't want to have a town meeting. He would love to have a town meeting if we could, but we cannot. So hence, because there's no town meeting, they usually AdCom in the fall. We spend a lot of time on the special town meeting talking about all these articles. Really nothing to go to really discuss.
I'll give you 2 examples of other things that we've probably had some part or some discussion about that now we're seeing with Marie talking about how going beyond Munis into a system that is a lot more going to be applicable to what we do for our analysis, rather than waiting on them to try and give us information, or that's something that we've been asking about for 6, 7, 8 years, is to be able to have that stuff and to be able to not have to wait on that one book, but be able to go on in real time, as she said. And the other thing would be that we push for greater transparency on the CIP committee meetings. And I think in the last 2 or 3 years, that has begun to start changing. So, I mean, that a lot of our position here grew out of our own discussions here.
Yeah.
And like I said, all I'm afraid of is that, with everything else that's going on here, the availability for having that extra time, unless we all are planning on being here until 11:30, to have those discussions after the regular business is done, to get into the other business of what makes this committee more operational and more efficient, is usually a lot of stuff we talk about afterwards. And so I just wanted to put that out there as an opportunity that if anybody has anything that especially new people coming here, I know you're going to be getting your feet wet as to how the thing runs. But at the same time, if you've heard about this or you're joining this committee because of a particular purpose or something that came up that you saw you want to be a participant in, then bring that idea that you had that got you to sign on. And we'd love to hear that input, because new voices every session certainly helps spur the conversation and may take us into a different direction that may have gotten stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, unfortunately, unless we know that vaccine does come, or if the numbers spike, you may see the governor, things could, it's going to be a crazy budget season.
Plug could be pulled pretty quick anytime.
We're just not going to know. I mean, what happens if all of a sudden numbers go up and he shuts restaurants down again, or hotels get, there's so much unknown. It's going to be a lot of work, and a lot of, you're not going to be able to prepare like in future years. You can predict numbers, and and I'll be honest, this is just my gut. I don't know, I know Bill and George are trying to be optimistic, but I don't know if we're going to see anything in July.
Back in this.
I mean, it's going to be a small window. They're starting to cancel things already into the beginning of the year. Yeah. I mean, I hope they're right, but it's, I think we have to stick with that 1.5. Just, and if it turns into something better, that's great, but it's, I'm not really sure how long it's going to take for that to bounce back.
Well, back in the spring, we were all kind of scrambling and grasping at straws as to where we go next and how do we prepare ourselves. Now we've had 5-6 months to think about it. We've seen contingencies, what has worked and what hasn't worked in other places, and so we bring that forethought here to our discussions as to asking questions that aren't just like a yes/no question, but one with the contingencies as to, well, if the town finds this out, do we go in this direction? If we don't get this, do we go in this direction? To have that type of flexibility and to maybe bring a perspective that hasn't been thought of yet, or maybe you've heard someplace else in the news or from a family member or a friend works in something else in their own town. Any ideas that can help sustain the way we're treading water here?
It's hard to,
pretty
Tom,
successfully.
it's hard to come up with questions when we don't have any information before us. I realize that we're going to, this is just my opinion, I realize that we're going to have a very busy spring, and if we have to have more than one meeting a week to get the job done, I'm all for that. And I don't want to sit in a meeting and waste all of our time until we really have something to go forward with.
That's why Frank, believe me, my initial plan was to call a meeting much sooner, back in September, but then there's really no need, because if we're gonna come in and sit around and then ask, and it really not getting a lot of final information from management, it's hard for AdCom to, to move on. And then Frank did say, rest, give the committee a break in the fall, prepare them for a bigger meeting come January and February. So that's why I'm not gonna call for a meeting if I really don't have anything good and anything concrete. If I get a good information from Bill in the next couple of weeks, we'll definitely call a meeting, because I want you guys to hear it. But
play it by ear.
Until that comes, so let's play it by ear. If there's a need, we'll have one.
Yeah, at least we know the proposed dates if we decide to move forward. So.
And Larry, you only need like a week's notice, is that right? To notify the town?
Less than that, what's it?
5 days.
I have to notify the town by Friday morning, but I tend to do it a week before. That way, because if you forget once, then you run into all those open meeting violations. So I give myself one
that's
week,
easy.
but really it's like 3 days, 3 business days.
Got it.
Do it.
You can technically do it, I think, Monday morning, but.
Well, you could, yeah.
But why?
Do you want Cutler? Do you want Bob to yell at you? I'm just kidding.
Well, I just know Bob has to be in by Friday
Yeah,
for Tuesday.
yeah. They
now.
always do it Friday.
But, yeah,
So.
smart.
So, anything else? Anyone? The motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks for coming, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Good night.
I said to Bill, if I listened to it twice, I might understand it.